Oh, there we go. My head's tingling. Oh, of course, yes. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love it. So beautiful. The moment that I started to feel that tingling rising up through my crown is right when I saw the orb switch. I hope y'all were able to see. Oh, it's like I love it. I love it. And the energy that comes, it's just such an elevated thing. And so it makes the levity and the elevation of the high frequency that comes makes me have that giggly, smiley energy, even if the content, what I'm saying isn't like funny, right? But it's just the love and the levity makes space for peace here, right? So things don't feel so dense. So I've been thinking about courage a lot, talking to God, right? My spirit team, having this come up in sessions with clients I work with, where they're directly asking me questions about how I've had the courage to do certain things. When little personal disclosures come up to move forward the oneness and for the sake of the work we're doing, right? And in their own journeying as they're contemplating holding space for these things. And it's a beautiful thing. And I knew all along when I was getting this energy that I've been talking about in the last couple of videos of having this framework and this ability to conceptualize the journey as a human and the awakening ascension process folded into or like critically the journey, right? The temple path, meaning the human journey of, yeah, all that. So let's get to the point. The fear and love, is this coming from fear or love? And when we're questioning and we're being able to see where might there be some distorted energy based on where you put trust, control, um, loyalty, companionship, company, togetherness. Where do you put those things? When I say this word or this value or this emotion, for you, does that experience fall under, it has an association with fear or love? Yes. And so as I was getting this energy around, is this fear or love? It's been incredibly helpful to be able to separate the difference between anxiety and intuition, which is a question I get a lot from people of, when people are experiencing some fear around their own psychic gifts or potentials. And this can be like this premonition energy or the way that our attachment wounds combined with our potentials for psychic intuition access, right? um, make people almost feel scared of their own power or their own expansiveness. And in psychological terms, we dip into some magical thinking energy and some real confusion around what is happening here with manifestation. And there's just a lot of separation of self inside of that space. So it's been really helpful to be shown, to be led, to experience intimately what does this energy feel like when it is in fear versus love. And I've been blessed to become very familiar with the love frequency. This is how I access the ability to communicate with spirit. It is love frequency. It's love frequency. And all along, I was having this feeling underneath a little bit like, this is interesting because it's helpful. I feel a higher truth to it. Of all things can boil down into these two different things. I've heard other channelers, other people who are inside of this access to higher wisdom and have done some of this healing work bring forward very similar things. And yet my mind thought, there is duality here. There is a sense of dichotomy here. And now I'm pulled right into the middle of it. Pulled right into the middle of that. Because oneness energy and ascension is so much this movement toward what I used to call detachment, which now I like to call non-attachment, through breaking of these illusions of separation and entering into eternal truths, recovering wholeness, which comes from recognition of some of these real things that are not confined to consciousness or to a human experience, including two dimensions of time. Like that is a key that unlocks this cage that is created from these bars, which represent illusion of separation that keep us inside of a smallness built from, it's like the metal is forged from fear. The fear is determining what self protection is. And there's an imprisonment and a limitation and a resistance to being fully, to having the full capacity to be guided by higher self, by higher wisdom, by the wholeness of you in super consciousness that is not limited to the brain waves of this human body, right? So as we're learning and we're growing and we're holding these concepts inside of fear or love, there's this stirring of a little bit of, well, wait a minute, why are we putting things in a dualistic way here? Because there's there's something else here. There's something else here, right? I just want to like, we're putting, ooh, my head is tingling. We're putting fear here. We're putting love here. We're trying to understand. And then if I visualize it that way, it's like the backdrops of a uh, movie filming setup that is like, I just want to go right to the middle and kind of tear apart and then rip that open. Because, like, I know this is a fragile film here, right? I know there's something else behind here. And so, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the courage to be carried and all these things that have been floating around about courage. My head is really tingling right now. I'm like, ooh, I have to like, ooh, kind of that resonance, right? So the courage to be carried, and this is probably what I'll call this recording. I can just feel this. So as this little thought is floating around in my mind of courage, where do we put courage? Where do we put courage? Does that go under fear or does that go under love? Because if there wasn't fear, then would there be a need for courage? Like, can courage exist outside of the existence of fear being a part of this equation? I'm not so sure. But when I tap into some of these whoop, heart opening, heart chakra, blow it open moments in my life that are absolutely connected to courage, that is love. That is love, my friend. That is love for sure, right? So my higher truth says courage goes under love. But I'm like, hold on a minute. My little humanness wants to put this on one side or the other. So what is this? Why am I not able to separate it out? And then as I'm asking this question, I'm hearing back from spirit. I was really stuck in it. I needed help. I was like, what side does it go on? It can go here or it can go here. Help me make sense of this, right? And then what I was hearing from the guidance was moving to, moving away from, moving toward, moving away from, moving toward, moving away from. And that helped me. I went, I see, right? We cannot put courage on one side or the other, because this is the life path of spiritual awakening, ascension, and enlightenment. And courage is the bridge, that shaky bridge I've been talking about. I've referenced it in other videos, but I don't think I called it the bridge of courage, that carries us from attachment wounds, survival mode, illusions of separation, through the journey of ego death, release of dense human ego identities or learned helplessness, the illusions of self-protection that we are taught from a place of fear that is originating from the sense of separation and fragility that happens so early on when we're born into the newness of this human experience, right? And so that bridge of courage carries us from the survival mode area, really rooted in illusion of separation, over to wholeness, eternal recognition of our identity that is beyond the temporal ego identity connected to this particular skin, right? And that's what it was. So when they said moving to, moving from, moving to, moving from, I was like, courage is the bridge in between. And so, yes, we're not meant to fully put it on one side or the other. This is what I was feeling when I was like, let's break through this film screen backdrop, because I know there's more here than just fear or love. There's more expansiveness underneath the wholeness and the neutrality energy when we arrive at, or journeying through, when we're actively journeying through the rise of ascension. The rise of ascension, where it's like dichotomy starts to melt and there's a lift, a freedom, a peace, and a relief to that, a celebration, a homecoming. Yeah. Courage is the bridge. When you're moving toward something and it is a fuel of courage that's needed to propel us in that direction, the movement toward has got to be coming from love. It's got to be coming from love, right? Moving toward the love becomes bigger than the voice of fear. And so we take that leap of faith. And it doesn't mean that we wait for readiness or the extinguishment of the fear before we move. It just doesn't happen in that way. And I hope I've been transparent enough as I've talked about some of my own personal experiences, as people will ask me these questions of, I don't know how you've had this courage, or how have you been able to do this? And sometimes after, like, my clients who know me and work with me for their own personal healing, and also feel comfortable to ask me questions about my own journey for the sake of their expansion and healing, right? I've had somebody just recently ask me this question of, I was thinking the other night about how was Miranda able to do this, etc., and some of the things you told me about your journey. And the realness is the shaky and steady. Even though I'm shaky, I'm walking on the steadiness of what's provided to me from spirit. And this is the courage to be carried. And here when I dip into that courage to be carried and to be guided, which requires the loosening of the grip of my human ego and analytical, logical mind that says, I require an understanding of what this is, where we're going, and how it's going to make sense before I move. No, it doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen like that because the point of this is to get out of the cage of that controlling energy that is limiting you, confining you to a perception that the externals and what you can see with your human eye is a reality that is more real than superconscious energy and eternal truth. We are breaking free from that. And so, of course, that's going to be a part of this journey. And I think about a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that I've known for a long time and has always just landed in my heart about the first step to change is awareness. And I equate this to this entire journey of the awakening. And I feel that my awakening was really coming online for me 8 years ago now at this point. And I began with these number sequences that I was seeing everywhere. And I was like, something is happening here. And I loved it. I loved it. It was amazing. It was like a beautiful gift to awaken, for sure. And now I have more experience with what does it mean to awaken and what comes after when we experience ascension. And again, this is a bridge, just like the bridge of courage. This is not something we can, in a dichotomous way, separate. Like, this is awakening, this is ascension. These two things are oneness. And one does not exist without the other. And here I think about quantum physics when they zone in on the smallest particle, which I think is called a quirk, like QUIRK. I can't quite remember. Whatever it is called, when they zone in on one particular of those smallest particles, it disappears. It can only be measured with at least one other in the frame. This is the loosening of the human mind's need to dissect something to the point that you have lost sight of it. You've lost sight of it when you try to hold the control and you can't see beyond your eyes. The spectrum of visible light is a spectrum for a reason, and the range in which most normal humans are able to see is just that. It's just an average range. And so a lot of people do. I've had a lot of people in my office who have seen, when I say to them, I see orbs, I see a sparkle, I'll let them know when it's hitting because it will happen in a moment that is information, it's validation. They're meant to know, like, oop, in that moment, I know you just received something very big and powerful because this color of a sparkle was right next to the right side of your head or shoulder, right? When I saw it. And I've had people, as they've healed, as they've worked with me, as they've adjusted to the frequency of the shared space with me, who have said they've seen a sparkle for the first time in their life. They've seen an orb with their own eyes in the presence of me in my office. Expansion. Just because this is what it's been doesn't mean that this is what it's always going to be. There needs to be this faith, this love, this courage, this magic, this trust this trust, once we have the awareness through the awakening of, oh my gosh, there's more here. What is this? What's going on? Yeah, that's the first step to change. The awareness is critical. And you know what I think that awareness does for me? It turns my head from the functioning from that controlled place where my movement is oriented to fear, and that awareness that, oh, something's going on, turned my head to love. Awareness first. And this awareness leads to inspired action, the movement that is not about distance, but direction. This is ascension. This is the path I've been on. And I have arrived at this place of what feels like wholeness to me. And I'll say that now, what feels like wholeness to me now, because in every next now moment, the unlimited, expansive possibilities here. Oh, we're just getting started. It always feels like that. I hit these critical points of reflection and celebration where my spirit team is giving me so much validation through my external world that is mirroring what is happening for me on the inside, where they're just wanting to say, like, yes, ma'am. Yes, yes. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. What you're experiencing eternally and internally, and what you just arrived at. Yeah, it's not illusion. This is real. And so it's just popping up in my 3D world and the externals around me in all these beautiful ways of confirmation. And at the same time, I allow myself to sit in the gratitude, the presence of this gratitude, and my knowingness that there's more to come and we're just getting started, without the need to get ahead of myself, rush toward that, view it as a goal or a mile marker, right? Because this is not about distance, this is direction. It is this homecoming energy that allows me to hold the space for the gratitude and presence. I'm amazed by it. I'm grateful. I'm blessed. This is love energy and joy that is moving through me. This is peace. This is peace. This is peace. This is peace. It's an amazing thing. And as I come to this point so naturally and fluidly, of course, right? Because I have written down here, I want to speak about gratitude versus regret was my last little point here. And we just came to it so fluidly without me humanly planning that, right? Of arriving at the gratitude that I'm able to hold in presence, in the presence that this inspired action and direction has moved me into, which is, it's moved me right inside of union within. It's moved me into wholeness and a harmony and a releasing of the wedges that were holding open the illusions of separation, creating a fractured energy inside of my own sphere, my own relationship to self, right? It's moved me into this homecoming. And what I was really reflecting on the other day was the difference between the capacity to hold gratitude and, something I was talking about with somebody got me in this reflective space where this energy, this channeling was coming up about gratitude. And I thought, I really don't appreciate when somebody who is coming from a wounded energy is so functioning from separation of self, from that divisive place where they are strategizing very much inside of the ego identity, which perpetuates separation. It is impossible to experience a harmonious togetherness when somebody's coming from that space, and it interferes with their capacity to experience gratitude. It interferes. And I've experienced this myself in the past and talked to many other clients who have experienced this similar thing. And here I've experienced when somebody gets very close to, and this mostly I'm working with clients who are experiencing this from a partner that they're about to separate from, right? So it's my client that I'll be talking to about this, where they get to this point where they are at that choice point where they have had some nudges from spirit and some healing that's moved them from staying stuck in attachments that are orienting their movements from a direction of fear-based functioning and wounds of separation to the love of choosing themselves. And in Western psychology, we call this motivational interviewing, when this tipping point hits and we're moving toward choosing from love, which is letting go of this self-sacrifice, self-abandonment, and smallness for sake of carrying something that never belonged to us. And when they start to make that movement, they can hear things from their partners that are some very reactionary type of desperation energy around their the threat of loss, the threat of losing something that they want to continue to obtain or experience in their field, in their life, right? And for me, what I'll say to this as I try to condense it down and streamline and go right to the point is what was really coming through my being and my heart, through my experience and through the presence that I have right now is I just don't know that gratitude is something that comes from being in a divisive energy. I don't think it comes from anything but the arrival at an ability to truly be inside of presence. Gratitude in its pure form, energetically, is now. It's now energy. Gratitude is from presence inside of this piece and a full capacity for a witnessing without requiring a controlling, a containing, an understanding, and that requires a grounded energy and a recalibration of our center of gravity from the fear energy to the love energy. Gratitude is love energy, right? The only way to release pain is with love. And I have experienced this personally and professionally. I've seen it unfolding in miraculous, very spiritually guided ways for the clients I've worked with. And I had an EMDR session with somebody where they were getting this directly and saying, in between a set, I feel like I'm being called to release this pain. And then the very next set, I am seeing this visual in my mind of being on a bridge with a gentle stream of water underneath. And they showed me my human perception of it would be like this person picking up these heavy stones that are on the bridge with them and hurling them into the water below to release it. And that did not happen. That did not happen. That was from a distorted energy of my humanness, right? And what they showed me was this person being in this very beautiful, gentle, peaceful energy, and what they were representing as the pain that was being released were these beautiful mixed white and pink rose petals, flower petals being released. I thought, whoa, that's the visual we're provided with for the pain being released. And then I heard those words, the only way to release pain is with love. And then the person, so all this is happening for me as they're doing their EMDR set. And I share that after the fact, but I wait because they are being led by spirit, and their ability to tap in directly to channel and communicate with higher guidance is very much a part, what I've noticed, of what comes online for people when they're with me and when they're doing EMDR. So this person then after that set says something almost identical to what I said, and has like love tears in their face, and says like, I just feel love. And so what I'll say here as I'm sharing all of this, and this higher level understanding of the only way to release pain is with love, is I think that gratitude, this is where we arrive at our capacity for gratitude. And that love energy, once we're there, can absolutely backfill and color in our entire journey in the shade of love. Because we're cracking through we're cracking through the illusions of time when we reach this point anyhow, right? So it makes sense that that backfills. And with that being said, I think it's a very different energy from somebody presenting to you from a place of fear and division, triggered by the threat of loss and the stirring of the attachment wounds. A plate that they say, here's gratitude that I've arrived at from realizing what I've lost or what I feel I'm about to lose. Energetically, very big difference from that being served to you as a last ditch effort to maintain control and to prevent our ego identity self from losing something we wanted but never had the full capacity to hold with a real-time gratitude and presence and an honoring. And that, when somebody is calling it gratitude, but it's very much held in a container of reflective energy. I didn't know what I had, and now that I'm experiencing this fragility of life energy in some capacity around me, now I know that I had something to be grateful for. That's not pure love from a wholeness gratitude. That is regret. That's regret. That's regret. And energetically, what I do with that, if somebody's trying to hand me a plate that they want me to carry for them, of, hey, I made you something and here it is. I like to call this dish gratitude. You know, I can feel when that is actually regret. And I want to, hey, I'm going to very gently and politely keep that out of my energy field that doesn't belong to me. And that's for you to hold and to alchemize and to walk through what we need to walk through. Because, you know, you deserve for that to be transformed. I don't think regret is a helpful energy. I mean, it can be, right? Take that back. I hear like the correction of this, right? Because it's just when we put a value or a price or a label on all the things that exist here, then we're dipping into that dichotomy, because the contrast is all sacred. It's all a part of this journey. I mentioned that I've been getting so many signs that are supporting and validating the experience that I have been feeling and witnessing from the inside out about my own integration, healing, and homecoming energy, which is providing me with this sense of more peace than I have really ever felt in my life. And I don't feel nearly as much that my energy is orienting around fractures and fears connected to illusions of separations, right? And so many different signs of validation, but one of them that I want to share is I have been seeing so many dead birds in the past like 5 days around all of this. And I swear to you, it's like two a day, two a day that I have seen. It's experience where it's not just a little thing that you can dismiss of one dead bird that you see here, which just that's a part of life. It happens. It has been dropped in my path as a sign. And here is some exemplifying of these shifts. So I'm sharing this one because I think it's not only just like the validation I received, but it carries an example of the deeper meaning, the truth we've risen into, which allows a space for peace and authenticity. So what I mean by that is in the past, when I was in more of that fractured energy, more of that fear based orientation, I would have immediately felt some nervous system activation stirring up and felt unsafe, right? And felt fearful when I saw that. Oh no, what spirit trying to warn me about? Like it would have felt like a bad omen, like, oh, something bad's about to happen. They're warning me through this dead bird. And I don't feel that way at all. I don't feel that way at all. It's so different. It's so different. Seeing this reflected to me in this world around me around the same time as I'm feeling this internal peace and this expansion that is carrying a truth beyond the limited view that I had from that fractured place in the past. There's no fear around it. I feel very settled. I feel supported and peaceful. I feel validated. And the message is just there. It is intuitive. It's not anxiety. It's not nervous system activation. It's intuitive guidance. It's love energy. It's supportive feedback, right? These birds that are no longer living, and it's just a shell of what once was holding life force energy and currently is this material, right? Is connected into rebirth, end of a cycle, ego death, rebirth, a recalibration of my identity, grounded from higher truth. And there's beauty to this. There is beauty to this. There's a shift. It's not fear. It's not triggering fear. It's not a threat. And here we're coming full circle to being able to talk a little bit about that question that people have of, is this anxiety or is this intuition? Until we have continued to rise far enough on that path of ascension, right? Which I can think of as like the shaky bridge of courage, shaky but steady, that we travel over through ascension, through ego death, through recalibration of our identity coming from something more lasting, more true, more real than the temporal illusions cast by the ego identity, right? Call that the bridge, call that a hot air balloon, call that a tree that we're climbing, that we're gaining height and pruning dead branches at the same time, right? This is the path of ascension. And the higher you rise through that, the more familiar you are with the frequency of love energy that is the courage to be carried into this space where there's more neutrality and far less fear. Intuition is always smooth, loving, and supportive. It's not fear mongering. It's not fear mongering. What is the fear mongering is coming from the ego identity, the fractured spaces, the illusions of separation, the control that exists in those attachment based dynamics. Guidance from spirit never comes with the energy of fear, even when there have been times in my life where I've looked back at my journal and I was being guided, but I wasn't having the full sight of what was actually being spoken to me until later. And then when I've looked back at that journal, I've seen things that my mind goes, whoa, this thing that happened in my life, they knew was going to happen, and they were giving me little loving hints that were enough to lead and support me without inciting any fear. Without inciting any fear. I knew as much as I needed to know to move in the directions that I was being guided into with the energy of the courage to move toward love, tipping the scales, and being enough for me to have that direction to move away from fear and to be moving toward love. And there on the other side of that bridge is this peace and this wholeness and this rebirth that was destined. And I remember a year and a half to 2 years ago, this was a card that was coming up a lot in my spreads for oracle cards. I was getting the spiritual adventure, the temple path. A rebirth is assured. A rebirth is assured every time. And here we are at that rebirth. And so the last like 5 days with two dead birds in my path, even when I was like running on the track on the day that the start of this was like 6/22/26 with the mirror numbers on this. And I was running on the track that day, and there was a dead bird that I was running past on every lap that was like in lane 2, right? And then from that, and that was the day where I was like, I really think something's different. I feel I'm home here now inside of my own existence. Yeah. And then another one or two every day since then until this morning. And this morning, when I was getting in my car to drive to work, I see a beautiful butterfly, no longer living, in my grill of my car. And it looks gorgeous. It looks like preserved. It's clearly not alive, but it looks beautiful. And I thought, definitely, I would have this butterfly in my grill. And then I looked up later, and I had already, over the last 24 hours, really been having this feeling of like gratitude and capacity for gratitude that comes in presence. It's the purity of that gratitude is nowness, right? And the healing is where we rise up into the authenticity to experience that full, unbridled capacity for gratitude, because it has to come from presence. And there needs to be this anchoring into our identity having been rebirthed into the higher truth element, right? The gratitude and presence versus when it's masquerading as gratitude, but it's actually regret in reflection. And then I saw that butterfly, yes. And I looked up what's the spiritual meaning of a dead butterfly, right? And it was a lot about impermanence and the fragility of life and the ability to sit in a witnessing of that from not a place of fear or grief, but from a place of presence in a gratitude that is lived into in now, in the now. I recorded that video. Okay. Thank you. I recorded this video yesterday, excuse me, and then I'm just popping on this morning to do a little quick update to share that last night, right before bedtime, I went outside with my kids to water our vegetable garden, and I looked up at the sky and there was a really beautiful pink cloud, and I pointed it out to the kids, and at this point it just looked like a normal kind of fluffy cloud in terms of the shape, but the color was really beautiful pink. And then a couple of minutes later, we went over to give some water and to check on this sunflower that we just planted like 2 nights before this and to see how he was doing. And as I was looking down at that sunflower, my daughter says, "Mom, look, a heart." And I look up at the sky, and that pink cloud was a perfect heart shape. Perfect. I never seen a cloud shaped like a heart like this. And I didn't have my phone on me, so I ran inside real quick to be able to get a picture. And by the time I got out to take a picture, it already had moved a little bit, but it's still worth sharing with you.